Ladies, gentlemen, welcome to the Jesu Otaku anime review. For years and years I've searched, but I finally acquired the legendary elixir of Phoenix blood. It is said that whosoever drinks this will be given new life, and a new life that will last forever. So, hey, bottoms up, right? Oh, pretty good. Right, should be any minute now. Well, this is not at all what I was expecting. It's been passed down in legend throughout time that the Phoenix, a delicate and reclusive bird goddess, holds the secret to eternal life. When killed, it is reborn from a torrent of fire and ashes, and watches mankind develop from a distance, vowing not to interfere with his evolution. In antiquity, natives would hunt down the creature for its blood. In the future, they try to analyze its DNA from samples of its feathers. But no matter what the case, man's thirst for the Phoenix's powers is unquenchable, leading him to destruction, madness, war, or possibly the worst fate of all, getting exactly what he wanted. Whether these quests take place in feudal times or in the aftermath of nuclear war, the result is always the same. Man will sacrifice everything in his life for the chance to escape the fear of death. If you think I'm being heavy-handed, wait till you see the show. On the technical side of things, Osamu Tezuka's legacy has rightfully long outlived him, and this extends to his animation studio as well, who created this TV series. Sticking fairly close to the original designs from a manga penned in the 60s and 70s, with the production quality of the 21st century, this series definitely has a unique look and near-flawless animation. It's funny to say this because the show isn't constantly trying to impress you with its visuals, it's just extremely consistent. It shows off where it needs to, and holds back when it should as well. Combine that with the extremely melodramatic and gorgeous full-bodied symphonic orchestra, and it's clear from the opening theme alone that this is one exceedingly well-produced show. Even the now ludicrous Flash Gordon-y portrayals of the future were retained, but the visual direction here is so refined they're really not all that distracting. Outlandish designs aside, the balance of spectacle and restraint here hits the sweet spot for me in anime. Just where I'd like it to be, not distracting, but completely engrossing. For the voice acting, I don't think I have to explain that the Japanese voice casting is excellent, in keeping with everything I've said so far, but what's particularly surprising is that this got a solid dub. In New York, no less. The woefully underused NYAV Post hosted the dub for Phoenix, so it's nice to hear some of the strongest voice actors from that area showing off their talents. Particularly because we rarely, if ever, get to hear them anymore, as the pool for dubbing keeps shrinking. The performances here are a little over the top and theatrical, but that's what this show calls for, and it's what the Japanese sounded like too. Overall, it's an extremely well-directed dub. Now, you probably gathered from the plot summary that this is not a linear kind of story, not by a long shot. Phoenix is composed of several vignettes with completely different characters from various time periods, with only the legendary Firebird as a commonality. Well, that and this guy, Sarata, who is a completely different character in every story, but retains his name and the giant tuminescence leeching off of his face. I swear, his schnoz somehow houses a singularity and is dragging its host through time and space. Look at it! Gaze at the mighty snout of Sarata and despair. Anyway, getting away from that great pimply man nose as quickly as possible, this is a very Twilight Zone-ish anime, and I don't mean to steal quotes from the back of the DVD, but it's true. They set up a micro-universe in each arc of episodes revolving around a what-if scenario, then attach the ever-watchful Phoenix, and end on a moral or social message, covering 5 stories total by the time the show ends that stand alone, only connected very narrowly by overall themes. But then again, that's largely how the late creator Tezuka worked, in little stories and parables, and this seems to be a very faithful adaptation of his work. Now, if you don't know who Osamu Tezuka is, he kinda created anime and manga. So, yeah, he's a bit of a big deal. He created Astro Boy, borrowing heavily from Disney, and then he created Kimba the White Lion, which Disney stole in return. He was a mind-blowingly prolific writer. All of his hundreds, yes, hundreds of comic series displayed his boundless imagination and handling of complex themes far ahead of his time. I greatly respect Osamu Tezuka, and my favorite work of his, Blackjack, is one of my favorite manga of all time. Now, I say all this because if I could suggest some Tezuka to dive into, this Phoenix anime series would be the last thing I'd recommend. That's not to say it's bad, far from it, you can tell just by looking. I'm gonna have to go deeper here. Phoenix was possibly the most passionate and definitely longest running thing Tezuka ever penned. It was very much his life's work. He kept developing it until the day he died, and as he had expressed wishes for a finale that would take place in the convergence between past and future on the present day, it ultimately remains unfinished. And honestly, this TV series comes across like it knows this and plays out slavish and half-baked. Tezuka's Phoenix tales weren't without their massive problems, and this series takes a few of them, plays them straight, and forgets to really look at what it's saying through that and how. This has 3 unfortunate consequences. 1, it feels kinda empty and transcriptive, and in a story where lots of horrible things happen to both good and bad people, that neutral distance can make pretty much every arc here really disturbing at some point. And not in the good thought-provoking way where the story guides you along its train of thought, but more the awkward thought-provoking way where the writers just threw down what they had read and hoped it would strike the same chord as it did in the comics. This is especially true for the last story, Love of God, don't watch it before you go to sleep. 2, the Phoenix stories are very mythic in nature, with huge lapses of logic and larger-than-life archetypes, and this doesn't work real well in a slavish translation either. It becomes less easy to swallow a powerful social message when basic rules of logic and physics are constantly being betrayed. Once that barrier is broken, the moral can't be seen in the context of the real world anymore. At least, in movie form in the 21st century it can't. It's not something you think about when reading a fairy tale, say about a wolf's head being sewn over the top of a man's torso, but when we watch TV, our brains switch modes and we're far less forgiving. How did all his nerves suddenly attach to the skin of... I swear there's no magic involved, this just happens. He can move the mouth and everything. Whatever you're saying about religion and politics is completely lost on me now, because this guy has a fully functional puppy dog on his shoulders. This is especially true for the last story, Love of God, don't watch it before you go to sleep. 3, the messages I mentioned before are extremely ham-handed, again, in keeping with the slavish translation of what were essentially morality tales. Tezuka was ahead of his time in dealing with complex issues, but the language of comics from the 70s seems really artificial in the mouths of these characters, and it's kinda uncomfortable combined with that distant attitude I mentioned earlier. Feels more like a sermon with examples attached than a story we can take our own interpretations from.
Why would humanity trust their fate to computers? Why couldn't they choose for themselves?
This is especially true for the last story, Love of God. Do not watch it before you go to sleep. The too long tuned J.O. version is that this is not a bad show, but more thought was clearly put into the production side than really adapting these now 40-year-old vignettes and looking at what works and what doesn't in film form today. Tezuka's limitless imagination still shines through brilliantly, but this lacks a life of its own. It feels dated and transcriptive. The little problems resulting from this cause something that's meant to be profound to slowly fall apart. Maybe more can be learned from this hollow approach to being deep than from the actual depths that it tries to share. The Phoenix is available from Media Blasters. The original manga by Osamu Tezuka is available from Viz Media, but in a now unusual flopped release, meaning the artwork was reversed so it would read from left to right. Yeah, that's something companies did all the time, not longer than a few years ago, really. And overall, their translation has apparently been criticized as a dumbing down of the original work, for whatever that's worth, I don't know. As for other anime adaptations, this TV series is by far the most recent, and while I haven't yet seen previous film iterations, and none have a DVD release in the West, they might be worth hunting down on their own merit. There's a 1978 live-action film based on the first story, with animated segments from Tezuka sprinkled in. There's the 1980 film Phoenix 2772 that combines elements and themes from the future-based stories, a couple of little-known OVAs released in the late 80s, and most notably the 1986 film Chapter of Ho, directed by the legendary Rin Taro, and based on what is considered to be the masterpiece of Phoenix's standalones. So if I had to gamble on which one to check out, it might be that one. Well, that was an adventure. I got better. All in all, Phoenix is a brief television adaptation of a great master's unfinished work that seems a little bit unfinished in its own right. By 2004, the stories adapted here seem both woefully out of date and so straightly translated as to feel empty and irrelevant. The catalyst for thought-provoking ideas is constantly sparked, but the follow-through is disappointing. Worth a watch? Certainly. It's not totally lacking, it's not even mostly lacking. But I have to be honest, this is not Tezuka's best, and this was not the best way to bring it across. It's ultimately just a very well-produced conversation starter. I give the Phoenix 2.5 divine ornithological encounters.
Who's there?
Sakonosuke, are you afraid of being killed?
Out of 4.